Hallo almal en welkom by episode 7 van Brandt Punt. As usual, I will answer all the questions or statements in the language it was posted. If I may suggest, please do watch all the previous videos in the series. There's heaps of information that might be very useful to you. Our first question for week 7 was by Gregory Waterson. Gregory wants to know, what would be the boundaries of the various cantons in the Cape Town district and how many would there be? Gregory rightly asked this because Cape Town is a metro and it is not as clear-cut as to where those boundaries are. But ultimately, Gregory, the cantons in Cape Town, in the Cape Town metro, will be decided by the district governments of that area and obviously by the people of those districts. What I can also tell you is that CapeXit is currently establishing a canton in the Table View area, which will be rolled out as a blueprint for all the other cantons throughout the Western Cape. The Tableview canton will be comprised of Tableview, Parklands, Sunningdale and Blouberg. So as from this you can gather that the Cape Town metro will be divided into specific cantons, including specific areas, ultimately decided by the people of that area. It is impossible to predict at the moment how many there will be. That is something that will be decided once we pass the point of no return, so to speak. So I hope that answers your question, Gregory. Die volgende vraag is van Welda van Wyk. En Welda vra 'n vraag wat duisende mense daagliks of dan weekliks wil weet. Welda vra, waar staan ons registrasies nou? Vir die wat nie weet wat registrasies is nie, dit is die mense wat hulle mandaat toegestaan het aan CapeXit vir onafhanklikheid. En soos gewoonlik gee ons mos altyd die weekse registrasiegetalle of die totaal aan die einde van die week op 'n Sondag, gewoonlik wanneer moontlik, anders so kort as moontlik daarna. So Welda, wat ek vir jou op hierdie stadium kan sê is, ons is net so nuuskierig soos almal daar buite. CapeXit vat die inligting van sy mandaatgewers, dit wil sê die lede van CapeXit, die persoonlike inligting van ons lede bitter ernstig op. Jy kan verstaan dat daar is wetgewing rondom die verspreiding of dan nou die deel van privaat inligting onder die POPI Act, ek is nie seker wat die Afrikaans is nie, Protection of Private Information Act. Dit is ontsettend belangrik dat die inligting van ons lede veilig beskerm word. En om dit te doen, het ons besluit om 'n groot sekuriteitsopgradering reg oor al ons platforms daar te stel. Nou, dit is nie vir ons op hierdie stadium moontlik om toegang te kry tot die registrasies, omdat dit gestoor word op 'n veilige webtuiste, 'n server. Ons is net so nuuskierig om te sien wanneer hierdie IT company, vir tekort aan 'n beter woord, klaar is met al die opgraderings, sal ons ook graag die nuutste syfer wil sien. Op die oomblik moet ons wag dat al hierdie sekuriteitsopgraderings reg oor ons platforms gedoen word, ten einde ons lede se belange en inligting te beskerm. So wees geduldig, Welda, ons is net so nuuskierig, ons wag saam met jou om te sien, wat gaan dit wees wanneer die sekuriteitsopgraderings afgehandel is. Dankie, Welda. Okay, then we have a question from Jonathan Manuel again. Jonathan, again, thank you for your contribution. I'm smiling because I love this question from Jonathan. Good day, Rian. How are we going to deal with sporting competitions, for example, rugby and cricket, etc., etc.? Now, Jonathan, unfortunately, the new Western Cape will have no sporting events whatsoever. It'll be all work and no play. No, on a lighter note, I must tell you, as there are so many countries across the world that are sporting crazy, I cannot for any reason see that the new Western Cape would be any different. We will most certainly have sporting competitions from a very young age, as that is the formative years of individuals. And sporting events and the participation in sport is a healthy way to grow into adulthood. How those competitions will be formed, what the names of the new teams will be, and all the rest of it will be decided by the people once that time comes. But as far as sporting events are concerned, I can almost guarantee that the people of the Western Cape will partake in whatever events would be arranged, even from pre-primary school level. Um, I also can predict, if that's the right word, that a lot of our talent that is currently participating in sporting events across the world would return and want to come and settle in the Western Cape permanently. So, if I may make a prediction on this day of April 2021, I think we'll be a World Cup contender, perhaps cricket and rugby, in the not too distant future. I hope that answers that question for you, Jonathan. Moving away from the sports fields and the big sporting arenas onto the roads. Jonathan, thanks for your other question. Jonathan wants to know, and how are we going to go about public transport, lawless taxi operators who has no regard for road users or their passengers? Now, Jonathan, I might have covered this in a previous video, but let me give you a rundown again quickly. Lawless society, lawlessness in general, is a symptom of a lawless uh, police service, law enforcement agency. So, if the law enforcement agencies do not have the pride and do not have the main purpose to protect and to serve, and are corrupted, that will filter down into society and onto the roads. So, in a new country, a new Western Cape, the law enforcement agencies will be established from the people of the Western Cape. And I must tell you, there is a very huge influence on national pride. If national pride becomes part of any law enforcement agency, protect and serve becomes a very high priority. So, lawlessness, including taxi or any other road users, any other criminal will find this intolerable to live in the Western Cape, because they will be dealt with. So, consequences for any actions, lawless actions, will be swift and efficient. And once that starts happening, criminals and criminal activity will diminish tremendously, because the consequences of your actions would not be pleasant. So I'm 100% sure that in a law-abiding society, road users, including taxis, public transport, for example, is a very high priority, as you can understand. The train services, taxi services, bus services, aeroplanes, etc., etc. All of these things will have a very high priority, and therefore it would be one of the main functions of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the police services, border control, etc., etc., to ensure that the criminality is dealt with swiftly, and that the consequences for criminal actions are harsh, to be a deterrent. I think that should cover it for you, Jonathan. Thanks again for your contribution. Our next contribution is from GV again. Thank you so much for your question, GV. Is there an economic expert that supports secession that could possibly weigh in? Now, GV, I presume you are talking about fiscal policies, and it does not have to be a supporter of independence at all. It would be helpful, but one would need an expert on economics and fiscal policies to draw up economic feasibility studies to show that the Western Cape, the new Western Cape, will be economically viable. That is one of the prerequisites of becoming independent, but it does not have to come from somebody that supports secession. It needs to come from a professional that can do a proper feasibility studies, take everything into account, and produce a document stating the outcome of his study to prove to the world that the Western Cape will be economically viable after independence. So I hope there's a lot of fiscal brains, people with economic abilities that support Western Cape independence, but it does not have to be somebody that supports secession, purely a professional that can produce policy papers and feasibility studies. Thank you so much, GV. Ons volgende vraag is van Lisa Stroebel. Lisa, interessante vraag en is al van tevore behandel. Ek gaan vlugtig net vir jou sê, jou vraag is: voorsien heel dat die regerende party sal toestem tot 'n referendum? Ek weet nie of jy verwys na die regerende party van die Wes-Kaap, die huidige regerende party van die Wes-Kaap, of die nasionale regerende party nie. Ons weet dat die nasionale regerende party nie in die Wes-Kaap 'n referendum kan uitroep nie. Hulle het bloot net nie die mag om dit te doen nie. Hulle kan 'n nasionale referendum uitroep. Die mag om 'n provinsiale referendum uit te roep lê by die provinsie, dit wil sê die premier van die Wes-Kaap. En as jy praat van die Wes-Kaap premier, op hierdie stadium sal ek nie graag wil uitlatings maak oor sy denkwyses nie. Die algemene gevoel is dat die regerende party op hierdie stadium, en ek beklemtoon op hierdie stadium, nie onafhanklikheid in die publiek ondersteun nie. Mens hoop dat dit verander. Mens hoop dat die groot meerderheid van die mense van die Wes-Kaap sal besef dat onafhanklikheid die enigste haalbare, ekonomiese oorleefbare toestand sal wees vir die Wes-Kaap. So, ons hoop dat die regerende party van die Wes-Kaap binnekort die gevoel sal verander rondom hulle huidige posisie. Op hierdie stadium kan ek nie 'n uitlating maak of 'n voorspelling waag oor wat die regerende party van die Wes-Kaap môre of oormôre sal doen nie. Ek dink jy hou saam met ons duim vas. Dankie vir jou vraag. It's always nice to end a video on a positive note, and again, this week 7 is no exception, and I cannot help but put tongue in cheek. Peter John de Kock made a statement, and this is the cherry on the cake for this week. Peter John said, "Why should members contribute financially?" And I think this can be a slogan. The dumbest question in the history of all time. Peter John, thank you so much. It is a rather serious topic. We want our members to contribute voluntarily to the CapeXit bank account, because the funds that we receive from our members plug quite a few holes on the road, or potholes on the road to independence. So thank you so much for that statement, and let's hope we can fill a lot of potholes along the way. Thanks again. Baie dankie dat julle gekyk het. Onthou asseblief om familie en vriende te registreer by CapeXit. Dis alles op pad na onafhanklikheid. En as jy die geleentheid het, maak 'n bydrae aan die CapeXit bankrekening. Dit word altyd waardeer, en soos ek genoem het, daar's 'n hele paar slaggate wat voorlê wat ons in hierdie teerpad moet volmaak. Baie dankie dat julle gekyk het. Ons praat volgende week. Mooi bly.